I'm at Musgrove Country Club. This is the Black and White Ball. I have with me here Mr. Joel Vig. Joel, it was a great performance tonight. Your one-man show on Tallulah, and of course, you're really Truman Capote. Well, Joel, here we are with Tallulah.
With Miss Bankhead, yes, she's here tonight in spirit and in effigy.
Is this your first time to Jasper?
It is my first time to Jasper, but not my first time to Alabama. I've been to Alabama several times, and when Mike asked me if I wanted to come, I said, count me in, and because I love coming to Alabama. It's I came here first doing an adaptation I had done of Truman Capote's A Christmas Memory with Patricia Neal playing Sook, and I was playing the Truman Capote part. And we did it at the Alice Stevens Center in Birmingham. And then we were invited back 2 more years, eventually doing it in Monroeville, Alabama, and Harper Lee came to see our performance, which was quite a thrill, quite a thrill.
I know it was. We are just so thrilled to have you here. This is the second tribute to Tallulah. This thing tonight, did you write this just for this event, or did you already have this, Joel?
Well, actually, I wrote this just for this event. I had done a piece called Truman Talks Tennessee, and I did that for the Tennessee Williams Festival in New Orleans. And then I did that piece again in Columbus, Mississippi, which is the birthplace of Tennessee Williams. And Mike saw it there, and he came up to me afterwards and he said, do you think you could do a piece about Truman and Tallulah? And I said, well, they don't have nearly as much shared experience as Tennessee and Truman. They traveled together, they wrote each other letters, they did all of this stuff. But I said, I think that it would work because nobody loved gossip more than Truman Capote, and nobody created more gossip than Tallulah Bankhead. And so they were like, they fed off each other. And Truman did, I mean, he did write letters back and forth to his mother about Ideal, and the more I looked at it, the more it really had emotional impact to me, was that Truman's Black and White Ball was really Tallulah's last hurrah. You know, she got to show up and be this grand star that she had been all of her life. And the thing I love the best about it is that even in the tiny little descriptions of the Black and White Ball, where they will say, you know, a well-known party given by Truman Capote, Tallulah almost always makes the cut. Even if they list like 3 people, and they will say, you know, Frank Sinatra and Mia Farrow and Candice Bergen and Tallulah Bankhead. You know, she made enough of an impact that almost always Tallulah gets mentioned. And it was a thrill for me, because I've seen those pictures for so many years of Tallulah at the party. I went to the Bankhead house 2 days ago, and in the display case is the actual mask that Tallulah wore. And the woman who runs the museum said, I'll unlock the case. You have to put on white cotton gloves, but I'll let you actually pick it up. So I picked it up and looked at it. And the thing that's so great about it is the mask is built on a pair of glasses that almost look like Truman Capote's glasses. And I think the reasoning was that most masks have an elastic strap, and Tallulah was so fragile at that point that having something, you know, clinging to her, and instead she just got to wear these kind of great Truman Capote or Groucho glasses that had this beautiful mask put on it. And it was just something almost magical about holding that and knowing that, you know, this was what she wore that incredible night.
And think about it, Joel. She cared enough about it. She saved it.
Exactly. I mean, it was, and not only did she save it, but she died in '68, and so her family really must have known that this was such an important milestone in her life that they held on to it and eventually donated it to the museum. And it's great to have something that sort of ephemeral that manages to survive and still be here. There was a picture that was in the paper today.
Oh, yes.
And of me holding the mask, and so I can send that to Kitty's daughter Kathy and just say, you know, I'm just curious about what happened to Kitty's mask, and because you know it is a part of history that that is great for people to be able to see and share, and and there's a few people this year. On November 27th will be the actual 50th anniversary of the Black and White Ball, and we are hoping to have a ceremony in Palm Springs, California, where Truman lived for a time. He had a house in the movie colony, and they have stars very similar to the ones in Hollywood that are put in the pavement. And
I did not know that.
It's great. Friends of mine just had their star unveiled a year ago last December, and so I was out there for that. And the people in Palm Springs are very excited about when I broached the idea with the head of the Truman Capote Literary Society. They got back immediately and said, "Oh, we think this is a terrific idea." And so the push is on now to make that happen. And, you know, the Black and White Ball, still, people really still remember that as a milestone. It was called the Party of the Century, and it really did change the way people thought of doing parties and having these theme parties, and it still has a lot of resonance with people, and there's a tiny group of people left who were at the ball.
That was so precious to her.
People like Mia Farrow, she was there. She came from, you know, a very powerful family, and she had a sense of her own worth, and as a result, you know, somebody like Louis B. Mayer just seemed to her like this big old pompous windbag, and you know, if he tries to intimidate her, and of course I find it so funny that Louis B. Mayer was so puritanical, and he's up against Tallulah, who is completely fearless, and she can just, you know, blow him right out of the water. I think in some ways it did affect her movie career, because she's, you know, really the only first-class movie that she did was Lifeboat, and then she played herself in some of those kind of movies like, you know, Stage Door Canteen kind of things, where she played Tallulah Bankhead coming in and, you know, hello darling, and, you know, it's so wonderful to be here selling war bonds, and but, you know, she didn't, the role that I think could have been so good for her would have been Glass Menagerie, playing Amanda, because supposedly the man who directed the film was fighting like crazy for her, and he said that some of the takes that they did of the screen test were so powerful, and he said there was one take where she was down on her knees pinning the dress on Laura, and all of a sudden she sees Laura's one crippled leg, which is thin and small compared to the other leg, and he said that the expression on her face was so heartbreaking that, you know, all the way through this she keeps talking about how Laura isn't crippled and it's a minor defect, and that, you know, here in this one private moment when she's pinning this dress and suddenly sees this deformed leg, that her face just told everything. Private Lives was probably her biggest commercial success of her career, and so there's loads of stories, and Tallulah was terrified about Noel Coward coming to see it, because Tallulah had a history of sort of making the most of her laughs and things, and so if she was getting laughs, she would sort of sometimes drift away from the script a little bit, and suddenly Coward was coming to see the show in Chicago, and so she was reining herself back in, and supposedly when Coward came backstage, he came back with the Lunds, who were great friends of his, and Lynn Fontaine was the first one to speak, and she said to Tallulah, "Darling, it was just charming," and Tallulah said, "I don't give a damn what you think, I only care about what he thinks," and she was so nervous that sort of just blurted out of her mouth, and Coward said, you know, it was lovely, and yes, you can bring it into New York, and I don't think she was his first choice in terms of the play, but she might have been his first choice in terms of making money, because she made loads and loads of money. Tallulah sold tickets. Playwrights oftentimes are really looking for is who can get people in the seats, and that was something Tallulah was able to do for years and years. You know, she was a huge draw. And getting Tallulah Bankhead to sign on to something for a period of about 20 years was like money in the bank. You know, it was like if you were doing a musical and you could get Ethel Merman, you knew that you were a hit, because Ethel Merman wouldn't take it unless she thought it was commercial. And if she thought it was commercial and had good songs for her, almost certainly people would be buying tickets. And
it was amazing to me, Tallulah, how popular she was in London. Now, did her popularity begin to wane, or what brought her back to Broadway?
London was having a little bit of a financial crisis at that time, and things were not. There wasn't as much production, and Tallulah was getting famous enough that one of the major studios put out a request for her to come. And it's interesting, because when you look at the film she did with Gary Cooper and Charles Lawton, Tallulah got top billing over both of them. It was Tallulah Bankhead at the top.
So Hollywood brought her out of London.
Yeah, Hollywood was they made the offer, and she decided to come back, and you know, it's interesting. She never really liked making pictures and making
the theater. To me, knowing nothing about acting, but that has to be hard. I mean, you know, it's no retakes.
No, she was.
But she preferred it.
She loved. I think the family aspect of the theater, and that you sort of became a close-knit group with people. She loved the thrill that you got being in front of a live audience. She loved having that immediacy of a laugh or applause, and it was a different time in the theater too. You know, she was a huge star, and she loved knowing that, you know, when she would come on stage, everything would stop and people would applaud, and she needed that reinforcement.
Mike Putman, this was a wonderful idea. And just tell us again, tell the viewers again, I always ask your title. It's Main Street.
I was the executive director of Jasper Main Street, but for this, it's Tallulah Bankhead. So I saw Joel at Truman. Truman does Tennessee. And I was Tallulah. Because Tallulah's way more interesting than Tennessee. Sorry. Because to you know, Jasper, she is. And so I wanted him to tell us, I wanted Truman to tell us all about Tallulah. So, you know, that's what I went for. So
Great idea, and he did one fantastic job, didn't he?
yes, he did, yeah. I had seen him before, and I was like, you know, you need to talk to us about Tallulah, and he did, and I knew he would, and he did, so it was great. It was great.
Aren't you glad to have him in town?
Yeah.
And you have enjoyed it, haven't you, Joel?
It's great. I mean, there's a friend of mine who created a site called the Southern Literary Trail. And the Southern Literary Trail ties together 3 states, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. And the writers and the sites that influence them, and several of them have homes that are open, and you come away from, you know, once you've seen the place that somebody grew up and the church that they went to, and all of a sudden, you know, you start filling in the pieces, and it makes such a gigantic difference to know, you know, that Tallulah grew up in Jasper, Alabama, and to be in the house that her dad built, and to go by the grandparents' house, and you have such a different appreciation for the characters they played and the lives that they led, and I think that it's such a rich experience.
Like sermon all the time.
Well, I said, you know, Joel, you know, you can do your gig and then you can leave. And Joel said to me, I don't want to just do my gig and leave. I want to do the hotel and do every event. And so I was like, okay. So I booked him coming in early, and I'm booking him going out late to New York City because he wanted to see everything that Jasper had. I mean, a 5K and a half marathon. Joel, you know, he wanted to see this. He wanted to see what Jasper had to offer. He wanted to see 101 Dalmatians. He wanted to see everything that Jasper had to offer because he was very intent on getting the essence of Tallulah. And so I was like, okay, you know, I can book you early, and I can book you early going in, book you late going out. And he's like, that's